These are some of the most arrogant Predator moments in To Catch a Predator, and this frat bro who thought he could talk his way out of an arrest. David Shoemaker is a 21-year-old that started talking to a young girl online. He eventually gets invited into the girl's home, but once he walks in, the decoy leaves the room and he's instead greeted by a man in a suit. That man is Chris Hansen, who asks David to have a seat. At first, David seems unbothered.
What's going on? You tell me what's going on.
But once Chris asks him to keep his hands where he can see them, he gets a bit confused. He doesn't know him, so he asks him if he's the girl's dad.
Who are you? Your dad or something?
Eventually, Chris asked David what he was doing at a 14-year-old's house. David responds by saying he simply wanted to pick the girl up to go to a birthday party.
What are you doing here?
Just chilling, birthday party.
So the girl here was going to go with you to the birthday party.
Why would a guy who looks like he hasn't been in high school for 5 years be going to a 14-year-old's birthday party? Chris then asked David if he knows how old B, his date for the birthday party, is. David says that he doesn't know. She never told him.
And how old is B?
I don't know, she didn't really tell me.
At this point, David thinks Chris isn't the dad, but rather a cop. His expression visibly changes, and you can see him start to panic. He confidently tells Chris, "I happen to know law enforcement when I see him."
I happen to know law enforcement.
You do. So you're an expert in this area.
No, I'm just saying, you come off as law enforcement.
Really?
Well, it looks like you need to get your eyes checked, bud. Once again, David claims he didn't know the girl was 14.
Somebody who came over here to have with a 14-year-old girl.
You're old.
This is when Chris Hansen pulls out the evidence. He starts reading the chats that he had with the girl prior to the show.
Are you sexy naked? Have you ever played with yourself? You gonna put my in your mouth?
And I like
Because I like that, I'll teach you.
Specifically the part where she tells him her age. After that, David tries to talk his way out by saying it was a role-playing chat room. He starts saying it over and over again for anything that might potentially incriminate him.
Yeah.
You came here
I didn't come here. I came
to
here.
have with an underage girl.
We were in a role-playing chat room, dude.
Just to get an idea of how bad some of these chats were, he asked the 14-year-old things like, "Have you ever given head?" And when she said no, he said he would teach her. What's worse is that during this entire time, David's sister is waiting outside in her car with 2 kids. Eventually, Chris reveals who he is and brings out the camera. David is so embarrassed at this point that he covers his face up with his shirt. Chris leads David into a false sense of security by saying there are no cops and he's free to leave whenever he wants.
You're not being held up. You're free to walk out that same door you walked in.
And after this, David pulls his shirt down and breathes a sigh of relief. He repeats the claim that he didn't know the girl was actually 14. She was just role-playing as one. Of course, when he walks out of the house, he's met with actual cops who are there to arrest him. While Chris may have completely embarrassed David, the next guy didn't need anyone to embarrass him. He did it himself in the worst way possible. A 32-year-old guy named Muhammad Abdallah started talking to a girl in an online chat room. During the chats, Abdallah asked the girl, who told him she was 13, what her size was. He also asked her if she's a virgin or if she's performed certain acts. Eventually, he tells her that he wants to meet her and go down on her and sent the girl some nudes. This is when the girl, who's actually a decoy, arranges a meeting with him at her house. When he walks into the house and talks to the girl, he's politely interrupted by Chris Hansen.
Good. Why don't you have a seat right over there?
Abdallah tries to tell Chris Hansen he was looking for houses to buy or rent.
What made you come on over here tonight?
I'm with just the person right there. I'm thinking she owns the house. I would try to tell her, what is it? And she say, come in.
And this young girl just coincidentally happened to call him over to check out her house.
Come inside. It's cold out here. How are you?
Chris tries to play along for a while, but he eventually calls him out on his BS. This is when Chris pulls out the chat logs between him and the 13-year-old girl. Hansen then shows Abdallah some of the pictures he sent to the girl, and Abdallah responds by saying, "That looks like me."
Is that you, these pictures there?
It looks like me, yeah.
It looks like you? Okay.
Once Chris starts reading some of the chats out loud, Abdallah tries to pretend like he's never heard this before. He also says that he doesn't have time to chat with people in the morning because he's in his office during that time. However, Chris pulls out a specific message where Abdallah told the girl he was in his office as well.
You asked her what she's doing. She said she's sleeping on her back.
This is when Abdallah's lies start to fall apart right in front of him. He also claims that it's simply not possible for him to talk to a girl like that because he's Egyptian and religious.
I'm an Egyptian, I'm Muslim, I don't do this stuff.
We'll lick you all over.
Like being religious has ever stopped anyone from being a creep before. While Abdallah may have been a pretty bad liar, This next guy could probably win an Oscar for the worst acting performance in history. This is a guy named Gilbert, who walked into a young girl's house after having a few steamy chats with her online. Once he walks in, though, he isn't greeted by a girl, but rather by Chris Hansen. Chris immediately asks Gilbert what he's doing, and to his credit, he admits he was there to meet a girl.
What you doing?
Meeting a girl.
Meeting a girl?
Like he's still a massive creep, but at least he's honest about it. Chris asks Gilbert a few questions, including his name and age. Gilbert lies while answering all the questions. He gives a fake name and age, claiming his name is actually Sean and he's 26.
And what's your name?
Sean.
Sean. And how old are you, Sean?
26.
26.
At this point, Chris asks Gilbert how old the girl he wanted to meet is. He has a deer in headlights moment here, but he lies once again and says she's 18.
And how old is Evie?
18.
18.
Yeah.
Once Chris tells him she's under 18, Gilbert puts on the worst acting performance in history and tries to pretend to be shocked.
Is that what you
Are you
told
telling
me?
me she's not 18?
Hansen starts reading out the chat logs between Gilbert and the girl. In the chats, the girl clearly stated that she was 13, not 18 like the Predator claimed. The host asks Gilbert what his plans were for tonight. He responds by saying, maybe if she were 18, we could have done something more.
What was your plan here tonight, Sean?
Hang up.
Why on earth would you even admit to that? Gilbert tried to tell Chris that the girl was actually joking when she said she was 13. She later told him that she was 18, even though nothing in the chat logs indicate that was true. But he said she told him on another number.
Tells you she's 13 here.
She said that, but then I was like, are you sure? She's like,
Unfortunately for Gilbert, some of the chats he had with the girl are incriminating enough. Immediately after she told him her age, Gilbert talked about how much he wanted to have sex with her among even more stuff.
Have you ever given blank a slang for oral? Did you like it?
Gilbert's excuses were pretty terrible, but you won't believe the kind of crazy this next guy tried to sell to Chris Hansen. Mike Manzi is a 30-year-old guy who started talking to a 13-year-old girl online and planned a meeting with her so the two could have sex. Once he arrived at the girl's house, he asked to use the bathroom, but when he opened the door leading to the bathroom, he was greeted by none other than Chris Hansen. Mike pretty much immediately recognized who Chris was.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. Good.
Why don't you have a seat right on that stool, please?
Sure.
After all, as a predator, you have to know your biggest threats. This is when Mike tries to take over Chris's gig. He tells the host that he was the one trying to protect the girl.
What are you doing here today?
Well, I'm here because I was slightly concerned.
Concerned about what?
Well, concerned because she's talking to people that are a lot younger, a lot older on the website.
He apparently had this elaborate plan where he would talk to underage girls online, arrange meetings with them for sex, and then tell them how dangerous it is to talk to strangers online. That's interesting, since Mike didn't seem that concerned before Chris walked in. Chris asks Mike more about his plans, and Mike lies through his teeth the entire time. He starts making stuff up on the spot, telling Chris that this could have been a valuable lesson.
To not, unfortunately, really worry about other people.
We all know what his lesson for the girl would have been if Chris hadn't shown up. Mike also reveals that he's a tutor who's around teenagers all the time.
Our tutor are these ages, older ages.
That makes it so much worse. This is when Chris Hansen starts reading some of his chats out loud.
Well, you're cool and cute too.
Mike said some pretty deranged stuff to this 13-year-old. Mike doesn't hold up his Good Samaritan act for long, though. He asks Chris if there's any police outside, and all of a sudden, his cocky persona starts to fall apart.
You need to know.
Is there cops?
There's something you need to know.
After trying to talk his way out one more time, Mike starts to look visibly distressed. This is when Chris reveals who he truly is, and once Mike recognizes that, he starts to freak out. It's almost like he's having a panic attack after prancing around the house for a while and begging for mercy.
Sir,
Guys,
it'd be best if you went out this door.
No, because I'm gonna get arrested. I know what's going to happen, sir.
Mike eventually just walks out knowing what's next. He then gets arrested by the local police. At least Mike stuck to his story until it fell apart. This next guy changes his story about 5 times, and none of it added up. This guy's name is Jaswinder Chima, who started to have a chat with a girl online who was only 14. The two arrange a meeting, and eventually, Jaswinder shows up at her house. As soon as he walked in, he extended his arms asking the girl for a hug. This is when Chris Hansen interrupts the two and asks Joss if he's gonna get a hug too.
No hug for me?
Joss pretty much immediately recognizes Chris. You can hear him going, "Oh no," and even apologizing before Chris even has a chance of revealing who he really is.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, please sit down.
He tries to tell Chris that the girl he came over to meet is 19, but before that, he asked Chris if he was gonna be arrested.
You're probably gonna arrest me?
I'm not going to arrest you then.
Why would you get arrested for meeting up with a 19-year-old? Something about your story doesn't quite add up, bro. Chris hands the entire chat logs over to Joss. At no point did the girl say she was 19, but there were 2 separate times that she said she was 13. Joss says that he probably didn't pay attention to those specific messages, since he was home drunk at the time.
I was actually home at that time, really drunk. I probably didn't even pay attention.
So you didn't even notice that she was 13?
I didn't.
When Chris asks Joss how old he is, he says he's 28 with some hesitation. He's actually 30.
And how old are you?
I'm 20, actually, 28, yeah.
28.
Yeah.
You sure?
I'm positive.
Yeah.
The Predator tells Chris that he's seen this show and he would never do something like that.
I watched your show on Dateline. I would never do that.
So you've seen the show?
Yeah, I mean,
So
I
you've
already...
seen the show and you showed up here anyway?
You just did, bud. He asked Chris if he can turn the camera off, but his request is declined. At this point, the Predator straight up gives up. He knows what's coming for him and he walks over to the garage where the police are ready to arrest him. This 30-year-old Predator was getting all cheesy with a 15-year-old decoy, but when the time came, we got to see his real colors. Michael Willis went by the screen name Generic White Male, but hey, I don't think there was anything generic about him. The man who claimed to be 30 years old had been chatting online with Yolanda, a 15-year-old teen. During their chat, Michael tries different ways to woo the innocent girl into his trap, but he probably slipped up with the truth when he said that she probably wouldn't want him around her. If you ask me, the teen should have taken the hint seriously. But did I forget to mention that Yolanda was a decoy? And this is exactly why she decided to play along. And so, as the conversation picked up, Mr. Generic White Male started to get really sly. To entice the teen, he said things that were not even remotely close to reality. While he described himself as being cute and built good, it is what he said next that will creep you out.
Keep us a secret because of the age difference. Younger girls like you don't come along often. I'd want you again and again.
I mean, that's sick. But wait, why was he emphasizing on the age difference? Well, to figure that out, all you have to do is just take one good look at this man. Does he look from any corner? Well, not even in his wildest dreams. This bozo, who was clearly well above 50, then proceeded to do something unthinkable. As ridiculous as this might sound, instead of keeping him tucked inside his, Michael sent the young girl a picture of his. Now, let me remind you once again, this girl was only 15. Anyway, in order to set pace to things, the decoy called him over to the house, and Michael did not think twice before jumping into the opportunity. Once there, the decoy asked him to take a seat as she swiftly left the room to himself. But not for long, for here comes Chris Hansen. And instead of being intimidated, Michael proceeds to have a cookie like nothing had ever happened. Well, I have to say, he's got some nerve to do that. How can anyone look so calm in this situation? And well, instead of replying to Hansen's question inquiring about his presence in the house, Michael in turn asked the TV host if,
"Is this some kind of setup or something?"
What's funny is that he expected Hansen to believe that he was on his way to the beach. Well, casual attire might help him get away, but not his intentions. To press him further, Hansen then asked him about how he got in touch with the girl, but once again, Michael was being as calm as ever. But I can tell you, it's actually the arrogance that's slowly building up inside of him. The pervert spoke as if Hansen was supposed to know the different ways of meeting girls online. He even added that it was a common thing to do. But when Hansen asked him if he knew the age of the girl he was meeting, Michael bluntly refused. Hansen then reminds him that he had the transcripts of his conversation with Yolanda, and it is then that Michael realized that he had to make a move, and he had to do it fast. Sadly for him, he thought Hansen was the only one behind his filthy and before the TV host could say anything else, Michael bolted towards the exit. He was in such a hurry to leave that he lost his footing and almost crashed into the floor just as he left. He then quickly pulled himself together and started to walk away like nothing had ever happened. But sadly for him, it wasn't his beach day. He was pinned down by the cops and taken away for further interrogation. But this next predator was so arrogant that he denied every accusation that Hansen had against him like the clown he was.
What about visiting a boy who's home alone? Does that make you nervous?
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
So here we have someone from an online gay AOL chat room who calls himself Hi Buddy, What's Up? This man tells the decoy who was pretending to be a 14-year-old boy that he was. Wow, what a way to start the conversation, right? While he claims to be 35 in the chat logs, he was actually 46 years old. I think all these men are somehow under the impression that the younger they pretend to be, the more appealing they are. But how the conversation proceeds is more than enough reason to creep the shit out of anyone. Anthony Palumbo was so desperate that he shared his disgusting desires with a young boy he was chatting with online. He elaborated on how he wanted to be on top and was precisely looking for some raw When the decoy asked him what that meant, he blurted out, "No rubber." Well, that shows how shameless he was. Before we move on, let's quickly give you a little background. Palumbo loved gambling, got triggered by warm beer, and no, he was not. At least that's what he kept saying. But I think he gambled a little more than he should have when he made the decision to meet the boy at the Sting House. So cut to the moment, and he was here with the beer trying to strike a conversation that could eventually lead to something more. But he probably had some kind of OCD, because he kept asking the decoy to do this.
You can put that in the fridge.
Yeah, I'll put it in a little bit.
All right. I'll relax.
Something about warm beer did trigger him, because I counted at least 4 different times that he said the same thing. While the decoy kept saying that he was nervous, in truth, it should have been the other way around. And just as the decoy left with a pack of beers, out of nowhere, Chris Hansen showed up. When Hansen started to cross-question him, Palumbo started to show all signs of anxiety. He was mumbling, and his lies did not follow a single thread. And no matter how hard Hansen tried, Palumbo tried to get away with just one standard answer.
Came here.
I stopped by to go there.
He started to make excuses for his nervousness and said he was a little shaky because he didn't prefer driving at night. I'm not sure how he felt that had to do anything with what Hansen asked him, but when Hansen got down to question him about the age of the decoy, Palumbo started to deflect yet again. He refused to accept that the decoy was 14, despite having been told the same on several occasions. But guess what? Palumbo had also lied about his age to the decoy and claimed that he was 35. It looks like he was not really sure himself, for he kept shuffling between numbers like this.
39.
39. You said you were 35 online.
35.
But age is just a small part of it. What's more concerning is how explicitly he detailed his urges with a 14-year-old boy. Even though Hansen showed him the transcripts, Palumbo arrogantly denied any foul play. So much so that he wanted to get one thing straight. He said,
Like that, it wasn't. I'm not anything.
it's weird that he felt the need to be defensive of being rather than being a child predator, which is exactly why guys like Palumbo are better off behind bars than being on the streets. But this next predator thought he was Mr. Smarty Pants, but unfortunately for him, his age got the better of him. And guess what? For the first time ever, it was not only the decoy who knew him.
No, Chris. What are you doing?
This is Charles Lawrence, an accountant who worked as a commercial real estate broker. But do you know what else he is? A total creep. The man who lived less than half a mile away from the Sting House fell right into the trap thanks to his perverted ideas. But here's the catch. Charles, who was pushing 60, was not looking to hook up with a girl. He wanted a boy. On social media, the seemingly wealthy man who went by the name 8x6 Guy was informed of the decoy's age pretty early into their conversation. But when the decoy told him that he was 13, Lawrence felt a little alarmed. For some reason, he wanted to play safe. But once the decoy cleared his doubts, the conversation soon became charged. When the decoy told him that he felt awkward having girlfriend, Lawrence had the craziest response. He first told the decoy that he would need a good teacher, and this is what followed next.
Yeah, you know one? You're talking to him. LOL. School is in session.
And to add to the haughtiness of the conversation, Lawrence then dives into the details of hardcore. After admitting what he fancies, things get worse. The exchange is so graphic that I just can't show it to you anymore. Once Lawrence arrived at the location, the decoy invited him and asked him to take a seat. When he asked for his presents, Lawrence got up to retrieve it from his car. And just as he was about to leave, something crazy happened.
No, Chris. What are you doing?
Wait, what? Did Chris Hansen know this guy? Well, apparently right from the second Lawrence walked into the house, Hansen had a feeling that he knew this guy. But once he saw him right in front of his eyes, all the doubts were washed away. Hansen had earlier met Lawrence in a commuter train during a real estate deal, and here he is trying to hook up with a 13-year-old boy. Almost immediately panic kicked in, and Lawrence tried to flee as Hansen tried to stop him. But just in time, the cops managed to nab him. And this wasn't even the craziest part, for what the cops find in his car will flip you out.
Cops find cigarettes, condoms, and a video called Seattle Bareback Boys.
Lawrence signed away his rights during the interrogation room and started to talk his way out of trouble. But that was not going to work because there was already a lot of evidence stacked up against him. What a loser. But this next predator was so annoying that despite being confronted, he kept smiling right back, like nothing was wrong here.
What was your plan today?
Nothing actually, just to hang out.
Just to hang out?
Yeah.
Was it
just like good old Lawrence, Jesse Velez was into boys. On one fine day, the 28-year-old general manager who was engaged to be married contacted the decoy to set up a date. The fact that the decoy was just 13 did not matter. In fact, it further turned him on. Sadly, these predators get some kind of deep pleasure in dealing with naive and innocent kids. And this is why Velez chose to describe his in a very graphic manner to the decoy. But if that isn't shocking enough, he asked the kid to come live with him. But then, what do we have the sting house for? And so, the decoy talked him into a date at the bugged house. But Velez had other plans. He wanted to go out to catch a bite. The decoy pretended like he was down for the plan. But then Velez backed off, saying that he wasn't hungry. What was he up to really? Was he trying to test the waters before he took the leap? While I was still contemplating, Velez happened to look straight into one of the cameras and immediately got suspicious. While the decoy tried his best to distract him, Chris Hansen decided that it was time to intercept. Hansen then walked in to confront the man and asked him the usual question.
What's happening?
Nothing.
Obviously, Hansen doesn't buy his story, because why would he send a picture of when all he wanted to do was hang out? When Hansen asked him about it, Velez tried to act innocent and said,
usually when I send a picture, like I have a bunch of pictures of me.
Right.
So I must have hit that, but I didn't really know why.
So this was just one big mistake.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
He then tries to justify why he was on the dating app. He said that he only wanted to talk and hang out with people and be their friend. In which case, why would he share such intimate pics with others? Well, his intentions were now out in the open, but it is his smile that turns me off. This guy makes for the perfect creep, and his smile only makes him creepier. But just as the camera crew walked in, Velez started to throw a fit. When Hansen asked him what he thought the lesson learned was, this is how he replied.
The lesson here is don't walk into no one's house that you don't know who actually even lives there. That's to be honest. Don't do the same thing to other people that you wouldn't want done to you.
Despite knowing that he was in thick soup, Velez chose to sport a smile and even shook hands with Hansen before he left. He probably assumed that was the last of his bad times. But once he spotted the cops waiting on him, his dirty smile finally left his face. It is at this point that Velez realized he was done. Unlike Velez, this next predator kept going, even when he knew he had been caught.
You ask her if she's.
What's wrong with that?
You ask if she does anal.
It's a question.
27-year-old Jeffrey Stacy had a really unique voice. If you shut your eyes, you'd think that Hansen was having a conversation with Mickey Mouse.
What's wrong with that?
Hi, everybody. It's me, Mickey Mouse.
Stacy had some vile intentions to engage in both and with a girl who he thought was 15 years old. He went to the extent of asking the girl if she would be down to nothing as he pulled up, and much to his content, she said yes. With these intentions in mind, Stacy waited patiently as the decoy asked him to wait while she got ready for him. But the only person who ends up showing up is the one and only Chris Hansen. Stacy instantly tried to walk out, but when Hansen insisted him to take a seat, he understood that his game was up. When Hansen asked him about his plans for the night, like many others, Stacy responded by saying that he wasn't doing anything wrong. Hansen couldn't get over the fact that this demented man thought it was okay to talk to an underage girl in the way that he did. Stacy even said that he didn't believe life on the internet and real life were the same things.
I don't see the internet and real life are two different things.
Now, this sounds really stupid to me, as he did show up at the sting house knowing that the girl was home alone. But the more he tried to explain himself, the more he made a fool of himself. Hansen was surprised that Stacy was aware of all the laws that protect children. When it comes to any no underage child can give consent of their own legally, and Stacy knew this. He had the knowledge and the intellect to know what's right and what's wrong, and still he chose the wrong. And do you know what else is wrong? That you enjoy all my videos but forget to share your support for my channel. I'm gonna keep coming back with some more interesting cases like these, and all you have to do to stay updated with all of my amazing content is to drop a like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And guess what? It's free! Meanwhile, when Chris Hansen revealed his true identity, Stacy proceeded to walk out the door, but what he didn't know was that the cops were waiting for him. During interrogation, when the cops asked him if he knew what he did wrong, this is what he said.
I showed up to...
For what?
I guess...
Well, apparently he knew all along, and yet he was arrogant enough to challenge the law. Why do you think predators behave the way they do? From the video today, it's clear that most of them are well-educated and they know their laws, yet they cannot help but give in to their vicious urges. There was a point when Hansen said that he has helped capture more than 300 predators. If this is the number that got caught in one single show, then I can't imagine how many are out there, freely roaming the streets. Will there ever be an end to this, or will it only grow? If you guys want more videos like these, go ahead and leave a like and subscribe to my channel too. It lets me know y'all are enjoying the video.